my name is Jacob Oldman, and today I'm interviewing Pastor David Glesne for the Central Southern Illinois Synod's Gifted for Ministry project. Why are you a pastor?
The short answer is because I think God wants me to be a pastor. I come from a long line of pastors. My dad's a pastor, my grandpa was a pastor. I wasn't going to be a pastor until one day we were sitting in church and it just dawned on me that I could do this, and it seemed to be the right thing to do, and all the doors opened wide, and it happened. So in some levels, I got that feeling of being called to do this, and everything just broke in the direction of making it happen, and that was pretty awesome. So it's one of the reasons why I'm a pastor. I think mostly because of God's call and the gifts that I've been given fit pretty well with the job. So.
When did you realize that God was calling you to be a pastor? How did you know?
I had a lot of input from people who said, you could do this. When I was little, I don't know, little old ladies would come up and they'd pinch me on the cheek and they say, you're going to be a pastor like your daddy. And I'm like, I don't think I ever said no, but I definitely didn't think that was where I was going to go with all of this. But part of it is the gifts I've been given, the family I grew up in. Sometimes you don't always realize the things you go through in life are equipping you for something that's coming next. And I think a lot of the experiences I've had in life, the people I've met, the situations I've been in have all led me to being gifted for this. And I think reinforced that sense of call. Once I had the call, I felt kind of affirmed in the fact that these people were used by God over the years to kind of gently nudge me in that direction so that when the call came, I knew what I was answering.
When was the first time you realized church was important to you?
My wife, Christine, and I had been married for probably about 6 months or so. And we were living in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Down here, I have to be clear on which Twin Cities I'm talking about. And we hadn't been to church except for a couple of times when we visited my parents in that time. And I remember waking up one morning and just feeling that there was something wrong and that something was missing. And it happened one week and it happened another week. And then finally, because I'm a little bit of a slow learner sometimes, it dawned on me where it's like, you haven't been to church in a long time and it's Sunday morning and that's why you feel funny. You're not worshiping. You're not doing something that is good for you, that has built you up, and I'm like, after all those years of not wanting to go to church as a kid, like, can I not go to church? Now I have this compulsion that I have to go to church because I want to. And that was one of those things when having that relationship and growing, and I didn't know the depth of it at the time. I just knew that there was some piece that was missing in my life, and it happened to be church. And my wife and I started looking around and found a church that we joined and just kept on growing from there.
How were you involved in church before you were a pastor?
So as a pastor's kid, sometimes you don't always get a say about these things. You get drafted periodically to read in church because dad needs a little bit of help, or I was the president of Luther League for 2 years, mostly because I was the pastor's kid, not because I had any innate gifts, and I didn't say no. But after as I grew up, I went to Lutheran college. I wasn't really overly active in lots of church ministry things at the time, though periodically, you availed yourself of that. But as a young adult, once we got married and we found this church that we joined, we were in the worship team, and so we sang in a contemporary service. My wife really enjoyed that, and I kind of came along for the ride and found that I really enjoyed it as well. And then I was asked to help teach substitute Sunday school, which was an interesting experience, especially with third graders. And then I started helping teach confirmation, and I found that I really, really enjoyed doing it. And I think those are some of those little seeds that kind of kept being planted along the way. So yeah, in certain ways like that. And then I remember at one point in time, I never got around to it because I had the call to go to seminary before I joined it, but a member of my church was on the stewardship committee, and he was so excited about stewardship and what it meant for the life of the church and what we got to do I got really excited about stewardship for the first time in my entire life, and I didn't have any idea why. And he said, you need to join next time we have an opening on the stewardship committee. And before that happened, God mercifully called me to be a pastor, and I still have to do stewardship. So there you go.
Besides leading worship, what do you like most about being a pastor?
I think it's just being able to connect with people of all ages. So, one of the cool things as a pastor is you get to deal with everything from, the children at the children's sermon and babies at the font, and, youth group and confirmation age students, as well as people who are getting married and people who are, experiencing grief and sadness, and the people who are a little bit older. You get to experience everybody. It's like a really big family, and you get little elements of all those things along the way, regular doses of, and you get to be part of people's lives, and you get to give them something that's not yours. I often say when I give communion, when I teach First Communion classes, I said, one of the great aspects of being a pastor is being able to distribute communion, because I get to be like Santa Claus. I get to give this free gift to everybody who comes, and it doesn't cost me a thing to be able to do it, and it's the most precious thing that I could possibly imagine. And so being able to touch people's lives with a gift like forgiveness, reminding them that they are beloved children of God, doesn't get much better than that. So it's pretty good.
What are you most hopeful for?
I'm hopeful that despite the ups and downs of life and culture in the world, that the message of Jesus Christ is still as important as it ever has been. I see lots of new things happening, and I'm a little bit of a technological guy. I'm a little on the nerdy side of things. So I like change on some levels, but I also love tradition. And I think on some levels, in the church, we have a unique opportunity to bring both of those things to the table. This timeless message of God's grace and love and acceptance. And then we have this whole new cultural ability to use technology and things like this to present that message, to get that out to people, to form relationships, to deepen people's faiths. There's just lots of opportunities for things that my grandpa never ever dreamed about being able to do, and big future.